Takes two to tango. It's a phrase I have found frequent occasion to use in my winding career path from dancer to teacher to now nonprofit CEO. And if you asked me at a cocktail party what I did, I am just as likely to say any one of those things as the other. I think of them as interchangeable. But that wasn't always true. It was a collision of identities that got me here today. Administrator hat in one hand and painting a picture of how badly our public schools need arts education in the other. I can actually pinpoint the moment when it happened, when I stopped thinking of teaching as a day job on my way to more artistic greatness. I had just graduated college with a degree in dance, and at that time in California, you only needed a bachelor's degree to get something called an emergency credential in special education. So I started teaching a special day class at a middle school in a small, urban, struggling school district. And I had never been trained in curriculum or pedagogy, but there I was in front of this class of kids that had a very wide range of physical, developmental, social, emotional, communications, challenges, and they're looking at me. So I did the one thing I knew how to do at the time. I danced. If I could think of any way to get a concept on its feet, we danced it. We danced about the number line. We danced about sentence structure. We danced about atoms and molecules. And it was working. The kids were having fun, and I was having fun, and we were all learning. But there was this one kid, Christian, and he just wasn't going to cut me any slack. He was disruptive, and he was mean to me and to all the other kids. There was another boy in the class named Dominic who had cerebral palsy. He was in a wheelchair, and Christian thought it was funny to throw wadded up pieces of paper at his chair so they'd stick in places where Dominic couldn't reach them. One day, I went off campus, going home, and had to come back, had forgotten something. It was starting to get dark, and I walked towards my classroom, and there I ran into Christian, spray can in hand, about to tag the side of my classroom. And I stood there looking at him, and in the back of my mind, I recalled that I'd heard about his brother being involved in a gang shooting just a couple of weeks before, and I realized it could get bad. So we looked at each other, and after a long time, he said to me, "Miss Paglia, how do you spell sucks?" And I said, "Oh my God, sound it out, Christian." And he did. And we wrote it on the wall. And we added the word life. And he sounded that out too. And we got to talking, and I found out that Christian's brother had been killed in that shooting I'd heard about. And that night, when I took him home, I dropped him off, and I was in my car, and I thought how awful it would feel to really say, to let someone know that life can suck and not have a powerful enough way to do it. And I decided whether it was a dance studio or a stage or a classroom, my art was going to be creating spaces where people, kids especially, could say what they needed to say and be heard. The next day, when I went back into school, we talked to the other kids about it, and they decided to help him clean it up, create a mural on top of it about recycling so he wouldn't get in trouble and I wouldn't get in trouble. In every single one of my professional roles, the most important part of the job has been building partnerships. Even in my work now with school districts, my dance experience has been hugely helpful in that. Partnerships between nonprofits like mine, P.S. Arts in Los Angeles, and school districts, they're just unwieldy, right? Our organizational bodies are mismatched in size and in agility and in functionality. So at a dance audition, you might get paired with someone who's much better than you or maybe not as good as you. And you know already it doesn't really matter, because in that moment, your whole job is going to be to adapt to make the both of you look good. One of you might have to work harder. You might even have to downplay your strengths. But in the end, what matters is that the production was successful. 1 in 6 jobs. 1 in 6 jobs in California are arts related. I use my dance experience, this idea to partner dynamically, every single day in my job, along with dozens of other lessons I learned from being an artist. Creative industry leaders say that creativity and critical thinking and collaboration, these are the skills that are going to help us be successful in a 21st century economy. There is actually more state money being spent right now on the arts in schools in California than there has been in decades, and yet, still only 5% of Los Angeles schools, that is the second largest school district in the country, have adequate up to standard access to the arts. And my question is why? Why, when the resources exist, when the will exists, are these relationships between nonprofit partners and school districts that are already, by the way, providing at least some arts education in over 60% of Los Angeles schools? Why aren't they being replicated and scaled all over the country to solve this problem of the arts only being an access available to the very small few? Having worked on this problem for 20 years now, I think we're being too rigid. We're thinking like administrators and not like artists. And just like the lessons that we want our kids to learn and live by, we, the professionals in this field who are trying to make these things work, we need to be thinking artistically. We need to have an artistic mindset. P.S. Arts, for example, we have kids in Los Angeles County, 25,000 statewide, 15 different districts. All of them are different. A one-size-fits-all model just doesn't work. We have to think dynamically. There are examples like this all over the country of arts organizations that are working, and in every case, they have a flexible collective mindset and a funding model that is both that can accommodate all of the changes that happen in public school systems. They think about potential, not deficiency. Instead of seeing a bare wall, you see a blank canvas. They're used to the fact that you're going to have to depend on people whose talents and whose vision may not look exactly like yours. And you get very used to the fact that you're going to have to share the spotlight and very likely the rent if you're going to have a hit. These are the lessons that I took with me back into the classroom that first year that I was teaching. And the kids taught me those lessons again and again every day. That afternoon, after the graffiti incident, we were on the playground, and I had the kids doing a dance about the water cycle for our science unit. And Christian, for the first time, was participating, and Dominic was sitting next to me in his wheelchair and watching, and he had no use of any part of his body that particular day. Everything was a huge effort for him. But he was watching, and he was watching a little girl who had a prosthetic leg, and normally very agile, but at this moment was having some trouble balancing under Christian's rain cloud. And Dominic looks over at me and he says, "It must be so hard not having your whole body. I am incredibly lucky." And then wheeled himself into the fray and put his chair right next to Christian where this girl could use it to balance herself on. Saw potential and not deficiency, made a space for himself in the composition that made it better. And I wondered, is Christian going to mess with this kid? What will happen? And he didn't. The other kids moved around them very organically, and they didn't seem to mind. Dominic hadn't been involved in the effort up to this point. And I just stood there and watched this group of kids, differences large and small, create an artful, balanced, poignant, and not for nothing scientifically accurate tableau. The arts make schools better. And the same goes for arts education, school improvement partnerships. The arts teach us how to be part of a community with all of its moving parts so that it's good for everybody. And it's hard. I know it's hard being an administrator, having an administrative job title and thinking of yourself as an artist first. But you go into those classrooms and you see the kids and you see the potential for what public education infused with the arts could look like. And you know that if we keep arts at the center of everything we do as leaders, whatever sector we're in, we're gonna have a hit on our hands. Thank you.